honking out of the sky before a storm of rain as they fly with a great noise towards the ocean stream, bringing death and destruction to the pygmy men, and in the early morning they opened their flight. But the Achaeans marched in silence, breathing fury shoulder to shoulder with grim determination. The dust rose in clouds under their feet as they marched apace over the plain, as thick as the mist which a south wind spreads over the mountains. Shepherds hate it. The robber likes it better than night. A man can see a stone's throw and no farther. No sooner had the two armies come near than a champion swept out of the Trojan ranks, the noble prince Alexandros. That was the name of Paris, who had carried off Helen. A leopard skin hung over his shoulders with bow and sword. He took his two sharp spears and challenged all comers to fight him man to man. So he strode out with long steps. Menelaus saw him with joy, as a lion spies a victim when he is hungry and finds a horned stag or a wild goat. Greedily he devours his prey, even if dogs and lusty lads set upon him. So Menelaus was glad when he set eyes on Alexandros, for he thought he was sure to punish the traitor. At once he leapt down from his chariot in his armor. But as soon as Alexandros saw him come out in front, his heart sank, and he slunk back into the ranks to save himself. He might have been someone walking through the woods who suddenly sees a snake and jumps back, all of a tremble, pale with fear. So Alexandros jumped back, and so he slunk into safety. Then Hector rated him with scorn. "Damn you, Paris, you handsome woman-hunter, you seducer! I wish you had never been born. I wish you had died unwedded. Yes, I wish that. And it would have been much better than to be a public pest, a thing of contempt. What guffaws there must be over there. They thought you a prime champion because you are good-looking, but there's no pluck in you, no fight. Were you like this when you got your fine company and set sail over the sea and traveled in foreign lands and brought home a handsome woman? She was to marry into a warlike nation. She was to be the ruin of your father and all his people, a joy to your enemies, a disgrace to yourself. So you would not stand up to Menelaus? You ought to find out what sort of fellow he is whose wife you are keeping. There would be little use then for your harp and the gifts of Aphrodite, your fine hair and good looks when you lie in the dust. Well, the Trojans are all cowards, or you would have had a coat of stone long ago for the evil you have done." Alexandros replied, "That is true enough, Hector, that is true enough. Your heart is always as hard as steel, like a shipwright's axe when he slices off a spar from a tree with all the strength of a man. A hard heart indeed. Don't taunt me with Aphrodite's adorable gifts. You can't throw away a god's gift, offered unasked, which none could win by wishing. Very well now, if you want me to fight, make both armies sit down on the ground and put me between them with Menelaus to fight for Helen and all her wealth. Whichever proves the better man, let him take both wealth and woman home with him. Then let both sides swear friendship and peace, you to stay in Troy, they to go back to Argos, where there are plenty of fine women." Hector was well satisfied with this. He went out between the ranks, holding his spear by the middle, and waved back his men. The Trojans sat down in order, but the Achaeans at first went on shooting at him and throwing javelins and stones, until King Agamemnon shouted in a loud voice, "Stop it, men! Don't shoot, men! Hector wants to say something." They stopped at once and fell silent. And then Hector spoke out between the armies. "Hear me, Trojans, and you men of Achaea, while I give you a message from Alexandros, who was the cause of our war. He asks that both Trojans and Achaeans lay down their arms on the ground, and let Menelaus and himself fight a duel for Helen and all her wealth. Whichever proves the better man shall take both wealth and woman home with him. Then let both sides swear friendship and peace." All heard this in silence. Then Menelaus cried out, "Hear me also. This touches me most nearly, but my mind is that Achaeans and Trojans should now be reconciled. You have suffered enough for this quarrel of mine which Alexandros began. Whichever of us is fated to die, Let him die, and let the others make friends forthwith. You bring 2 lambs, a white ram and a black ewe for Earth and Sun, and we will bring another ram for Zeus. Call his grace King Priam, that he may take the oath himself, for his sons are overbearing and faithless, and we do not wish anything done to violate the solemn oath. Young men's minds are always aflutter, but when an old man is there, he looks both before and behind to see that the best is done for both sides. Achaeans and Trojans were all glad that there was some hope to end that lamentable war. They arranged their chariots in order, the men got out and put off their armor, laying it all upon the ground close together, and leaving a small space between the armies. Hector sent 2 heralds into the city to fetch the animals and to call Priam. King Agamemnon sent Talthybius to the camp with orders to bring the ram. Meanwhile, Iris had her own errand to Helen. She took the likeness of her good sister Laodice, the most beautiful of Priam's daughters, the wife of Helicaon Antenor's son. Iris found Helen in her room. She was weaving a great web of purple stuff, double size, and embroidering in it pictures of the battles of that war, which 2 armies were waging for her sake. Iris came up to Helen and said, "Come along, my love, and see a wonderful sight. They were all fighting in the plain like fury, and now, all of a sudden, they are sitting down. Not a sound to be heard, no more battle, all leaning upon their shields and their spears stuck in the ground. But Alexandros and Menelaus are going to fight for you, and you are to be the wife of the winner." These words pierced Helen to the heart. She longed for her husband of the old days, for home and family. At once she threw a white veil over her and left the house quickly with tears running down her cheeks. 2 maids were in attendance, Aethra and Clymene with her great eyes. They made their way to the Scaean gates. Priam was sitting over the gatehouse in a group of the city elders, Panthous and Thymoetes, Lampus and Clytius, Hicetaon, once well known in the field, and 2 men of tried wisdom, Eucaligon and Antenor. These were old men, long past their fighting days, but excellent speakers. There they all sat on the tower, chirruping in their thin old voices like so many crickets on a tree. As they saw Helen coming up, they whispered to one another in plain words, "No wonder Achaeans and Trojans have been fighting all these years for such a woman. I do declare she is like some divine creature come down from heaven. Well, all the same, I wish you would sail away and not stay here to be the ruin of us and our children." But Priam called Helen to his side. "Come here, my dear child, and sit by me to see your husband that was and your family and friends. I don't blame you, my dear. I blame only the gods for sending that host of enemies to bring tears to our eyes. Tell me the name of that prodigious man yonder. Who is he, that big handsome man? Others there are a head taller, that is true, but so fine a man I never did see, or so royal. He is every inch a king." Helen answered, "You do me honor, my dear good father. How I wish I had died before I followed your son here, and left my bridal chamber and my family, my beloved daughter, and all my young friends. But that was not to be, and so I pine away in sorrow. But I must answer your question. That is the great King Agamemnon of the house of Atreus, a good king and a strong spearman both. He was my own good brother, to my shame, as sure as ever he was born." The old man gazed at him with admiration and said, "Atrides, you are blessed indeed, a son of fortune, happy in your lot. A great nation indeed is under your sway. I have traveled as far as vine-clad Phrygia, and there I saw a host of Phrygian men with their dapple nags, the people of Otreus and splendid Mygdon, who were there campaigning on the banks of Sangarius, for I was among them as a volunteer on the day when the Amazons came, those women as good as men. But all those hosts were not so many as the Achaeans here." Next the old man asked about Odysseus. "Tell me again, dear child, who is that? A head shorter than my lord King Agamemnon, but broader in shoulders and chest. His arms lie on the ground, and he is patrolling the ranks of men like a tame wether. Indeed, he looks very like a thick-fleeced ram marching through a flock of white ewes." Helen answered, "That is Odysseus, Laertes' son, the man who is never at a loss. He was bred in Ithaca, a rugged, rocky land. There is no device or invention which he does not know." At this, Antenor broke in. "Yes, my lady," he said, "you have spoken nothing but the truth. Odysseus has been here already. He came with Menelaus on a mission concerning yourself. I entertained them both in my house, and I got to know their looks and their many inventions. When they came before our assembly, standing Menelaus was head and shoulders above him. While they both sat, Odysseus was more dignified. But when they put the patterns of their minds and inventions into words before us all, Menelaus ran smoothly on, said not much but very clearly, for he was not one of many words or one to miss the right word, yet he was the younger man. Then Odysseus rose, this man who is never at a loss. He would stand with his eyes fixed on the ground, didn't move the staff backwards or forwards, but held it stiff like a dull fellow. You would call him surly and stupid both. But as soon as he let out his great voice from his chest, and a shower of words falling thick and soft like snowflakes in winter-time, no other man alive could come near Odysseus. But then we did not think him so very much to look at. Then the old man saw Aeneas, and asked again, "Who is that other big, handsome man among the Achaeans, standing head and broad shoulders above the rest?" Helen answered, "That giant of a man is Aeneas, a real tower of strength, and opposite him is Idomeneo, standing among his Cretan captains like a god. Menelaus often entertained him in our house when he used to come over from Crete. And now I can see all the others that I know, and I can tell you their names, but two I cannot see, two young princes, Castor, who can tame any horse, and Polydeuces, the boxer, my own two brothers, my own mother's sons. I wonder if they never left Lacedaemon, or perhaps they did come, and now they will not show themselves in the field because I have brought all that shame upon them." But it was not as she said. Already Mother Earth held them fast, far away in Lacedaemon, their own native land. By this time the heralds in the city were bringing the lambs for the sacrifice and the generous wine in a goatskin. Idaeus, holding a large bowl and golden cups, came up to the old king and said, "Rise up, Laomedontiades. You are summoned by the chief captains of the embattled hosts of Ilios and Achaea to come down into the plain and to make a sworn league of friendship. Alexandros and Menelaus will fight with long spears for the woman. The victor shall hold both woman and wealth. But we shall all make a sworn league of friendship, that we may hold our own rich land, and they may return to their country of noble horses and fair women." The old man shivered, but he ordered his men to harness the horses, and they set to with a will. Priam entered the car and picked up the reins. Antenor took his place beside him, and they drove the team swiftly through the Scaean gates. When they reached the plain, they dismounted between the two armies. Then Agamemnon rose up, and Odysseus. The heralds solemnly brought the offerings together, and mixed wine in the bowl, and poured water over the two kings' hands. Agamemnon drew the knife which hung by the sheath of his great sword, and cut hairs from the lambs' heads. The heralds gave some to the chief men on each side. Then Agamemnon lifted up his hands, and prayed in a loud voice, "O Father Zeus, almighty and most gracious, Lord of Ida! O Son, who seest all things and hearest all things! O rivers and earth, and ye too who in the world below punish after death men who swear a false oath, be you witnesses, keep this oath sacred. If Alexandros shall kill Menelaus, then let him keep Helen and all her wealth, and we will return home with our fleet. But if Menelaus shall kill Alexandros, the Trojans shall give up Helen and all her wealth, and they shall pay to the Argives such compensation as is proper, such as may be noised abroad in generations to come." And if the compensation shall not be paid by Priam and Priam's sons when Alexandros falls, then I will fight for satisfaction, and here I will stay until I shall end the war." Then he cut the throats of the lambs and laid them upon the ground, struggling and gasping for breath when the knife had taken their strength away. The wine was drawn from the bowl and poured into the cups, and they offered prayer to the deathless god. This was the prayer of Trojans and Achaeans alike. "O Zeus, almighty and most glorious, and all ye immortal gods, if either of our nations hurt the other against this oath, may their brains run out on the ground like this wine, theirs and their children's, and may their wives be servants to others." But Zeus Cronion did not bring that yet to fulfillment. Now Priam Dardanides spoke. "Hear me, Trojans and Achaean men of war. I am going back to the city, since I cannot endure to see my dear son fighting with Menelaus. Zeus knows, the gods know which of the two is destined to die." He took the lambs with him and entered the chariot and picked up the reins. Antenor took his place beside him, and they drove away. But Hector and Odysseus first measured out a space, then put lots in a helmet and shook them for the first spear cast. The men on each side lifted up their hands and prayed, "O Father Zeus, almighty and most glorious Lord of Ida, whichever of these two brought the troubles upon both our nations, grant that he may perish and go down to the house of Hades, and grant that we may have friendship and keep this oath." Then Hector shook the helmet, looking behind him. In a moment the lot of Paris leapt out. The others all sat down in ranks beside their horses and armor, while Alexandros armed himself. First he put on his fine greaves with silver anklets, next a corselet across his chest, his brother Lycaon's, which fitted him. Over his shoulders he slung the sword with silver knobs, then a strong broad shield, and upon his head a fine helmet with horsehair plume that shook fit to frighten a man. Last he caught up a spear that suited his grip. Menelaus also armed himself in the same way. Now the two strode out into the middle with grim looks that struck awe into all beholders. They came to a stand in the measured space, shaking their spears at each other in defiance. Alexandros first cast his spear. Menelaus caught it neatly upon the shield. The spear did not break through the metal, but the point was bent. Menelaus had the second shot, and before he cast he made his prayer to Father Zeus. "O Lord Zeus, grant vengeance upon Alexandros, who has wronged me unprovoked. Bring him low by my hand, that many a man may shudder in long generations to come at the thought of wronging a friend who shows him hospitality." He balanced the spear and cast it, and struck the shield of Alexandros. Right through the shield ran the stout spear, tore right through his corselet, and cut through the tunic along his side, but he swerved away from his death. Then Atrides drew his sword, and stretching over, struck the horn of the helmet. But the blade broke upon it in 3 or 4 splinters, and fell from his hand. Atrides groaned, and looked up to heaven, crying, "O Father Zeus, such an unkind god as you there never was. You do spoil everything. I did think I had paid out that scoundrel, and here is my sword broken in my hand, and my spear missed and never touched him." He made one leap and caught hold of the horsehair plume, turned and dragged Alexandros towards his own ranks. The helmet strap choked him, pulled tight under his chin, and Menelaus almost got him. A glorious victory it would have been, but Aphrodite saw it and broke the strap. So all he got was the empty helmet. He threw it over with a swing to his friends, and leapt back to kill his enemy with the spear. But Aphrodite carried him off in a thick mist, as a god can easily do, and put him down in Helen's sweet-scented chamber. Now she took the shape of an old woman who used to comb wool for Helen in her old home before she left Lacedaemon, one whom she dearly loved. In this shape she went in search of Helen. She found her on the battlements with a crowd of women and plucked her by the skirt. "Come here," she said. "Thy man wants thee at home. He's in thy room on the bed, all finery and shinery. They'st never think he's fresh from fighting a man. more like just come from a dance, or just going maybe. These words stirred Helen's temper. Now she knew the goddess by her beautiful throat and lovely breast and shining eyes. She was amazed and cried out, "This is strange indeed. Why do you wish to befool me? Will you carry me away somewhere still farther off, to some city of Phrygia or Maeonia, where you have another friend among the sons of men? I suppose Menelaus has killed him and wants to take me home, the woman whom he hates. I suppose that's why you are here with more of your tricks and schemes. Go and sit by him yourself. Forget the way to Olympus, and never let your feet feel it again. Fuss about the man, take good care of him, and perhaps he will make you his wife one day, or his slave at least. To that place I will not go. It would be a shame. I will not make his bed. What will the Trojan women say? And I have troubles enough already." The goddess flew into a rage and said, "Don't try me too far, hard-hearted woman, or I may be angry and leave you, and hate you as much as I love you desperately now. I may make Trojans and Danaans hate each other like death, so that you will have a cruel fate between them." Helen was terrified and followed her in silence, wrapping her robe close about her. The other women saw nothing. When they reached the house, her attendants turned to their work, and she went up to her room. Aphrodite, all smiles, put a chair for her in front of Alexandros, and there Helen sat down. But she turned her eyes away and said with contempt, "You have come back from the battle. I wish you had died there, and a strong man had killed you, he that was my husband before you. It was your boast once that you were the better man in a fair fight. Then go and challenge Menelaus to fight again. But no, I advise you not to try. Fight no duel with Menelaus. Leave him alone. Don't be a fool, or perhaps you may go down before his spear." Paris answered, "You need not scold me, my dear. This time Menelaus has won because Athena helped him. Next time it will be my turn, for I have my gods too. Let us love and be happy. I was never so much in love before, not even when I carried you off in my ship from Lacedaemon, and we shared our first love in that island. I am more in love with you now than ever, and I want you more." So saying, he lay down on the bed, and she came to him. While they lay there together, Menelaus was striding up and down like a wild beast, looking everywhere for Alexandros. But no one could show him a glimpse of Alexandros among the Trojans or their allies. Not for love. They were not going to hide him if they did see him, for they all hated him like Black Death. At last my lord Agamemnon said before them all, "Take notice, Trojans and Dardanians and allied nations. Victory lies with Menelaus, as you see. Your duty is then to hand over Helen and all her wealth, and pay whatever compensation is right and proper, such as may be noised abroad in generations to come." And all the Achaeans raised a cheer. Book 4. The First Battle Between Trojans and Achaeans. The gods were all in their places on the golden floor, sitting with Zeus in conclave. Hebe went round with the nectar, and they pledged one another with their golden goblets, while they watched what was going on before Troy. Suddenly Zeus thought he would tease Hera a little, and he said in a mocking tone to draw her, "Two of our august company are allies of Menelaus. I mean Hera, who backs Argos, of course, and our Boeotian guardian Athena. But here they are both keeping out of the way and watching the show with great enjoyment. And there is the enemy, there is Aphrodite, always beside him, all smiles, keeping off the shots. Look, there, now, she has just saved him when he thought he was a dead man. But there's no doubt victory goes to Menelaus. Let us consider what is to be done. Shall we make them begin the war again and fight it out, or shall we make them friends? If that is good and pleasing in the sight of all, the city of Priam may still remain inhabited, and Menelaus can take his Helen back to Argos." Athena and Hera were close together, plotting trouble for Troy. When he said this, they were both furious and grunted something. Athena held her tongue, but Hera could not find room for all the fury inside her, and she cried out, "Oh, you dreadful creature, what a thing to say! How can you wish me to waste all my trouble for nothing? How I sweated and sweated! All my drudgery thrown away, the horses tired out with collecting the people to destroy Priam and his sons. Go on, do as you like, but let me tell you, we do not all agree." Zeus Cloud-Gatherer was angry himself now. He said, "Oh, you amazing creature, what harm has Priam or Priam's sons done to you, that you never cease trying to make a wilderness of the noble city? Go through the gates, go into the fortress, munch up Priam raw with Priam's sons and all his people, and then perhaps you could cure that fury of yours. Very well, do as you please. I have my fears that this quarrel may leave a bitter grudge between us. But one thing I tell you, and don't forget it, if I ever want to destroy some city where you have friends of yours, do not try to thwart my vengeance, but leave me alone. I will not be the only one to say yes when I wanted to say no. For of all the cities of mortal men which are built under the stars of heaven, I have always loved best sacred Ilios, and King Priam and the people of that fine old soldier king. My altar there never lacked public feast, or the savor of burnt offering and drink offering, which is our solemn rite." His queen opened her great eyes wide and said, "I tell you, there are 3 cities which I love best, Argos and Sparta and the broad seats of Messene. Sack them all whenever you take a dislike to them. I tell you, I do not defend them or care about them, for even if I grudge it and ask you to spare them, what is the use of my grudging? You are much stronger than I am. Still, I have my rights, too. My trouble ought not to go for nothing, since I am a god, too, of the same birth as yourself, eldest daughter of crook-minded Kronos, eldest and most honorable, both by birth and because I am called your wife, and you are lord of the immortals. Come, then. Let us give way to each other, I to you and you to me. Then all the others will go with us. But now be quick, and send down Athena to the battlefield. Let her contrive somehow to get the Trojans to break the oath and attack those overproud Achaeans before the others can." Zeus did not refuse. He told Athena in plain words what he wanted. "Look sharp. Go right into the battle and contrive somehow or other to get these Trojans to break their oath and attack before the others can." Athena was only too glad to do it, and shot down from the peaks of Olympus. Like a blazing star which the Lord of Heaven shoots forth, bright and scattering sparks all around, to be a portent for sailors or for some great army of men, so Pallas Athena shot down to earth and leapt into the throng, to the amazement of Trojans and Achaeans both. You might have heard one man say to another, "This means more battles and hard fighting," or else, "Here is friendship set up between us by Zeus, the dispenser of war." Athena now took the form of a Trojan, the doughty warrior Laodocus, Antenor's son, and went about searching for Pandarus. She found him standing among the ranks of targeteers who had marched with him from Aesopus River, and she spoke to him plainly. "Will you take my advice and show your good skill? Then dare to have a quick shot at Menelaus. This will give you great credit, and all the Trojans will thank you, most of all Prince Alexandros. He will be the first to heap rewards upon you if he sees that mighty man of war, King Menelaus, brought down by your arrow and laid out on a funeral pyre. Come along, have a shot at Menelaus, and offer your vow to Apollo Lysagenes, prince of archers, that you will make a solemn sacrifice of firstling lambs when you return home to the sacred city of Zelea." He let himself be persuaded, poor fool, and at once he stripped his bow. This was a bow made from the polished horns of a wild ibex, which he had once caught while out hunting. He had shot it through the chest as it came from behind a rock and knocked it back upon the rock. The 2 horns measured 16 hands from the head. A skillful horner had worked it and fitted the pieces together, polished them up, and put a gold hook on the top. Pandarus steadied the end on the ground and strung the bow, then laid it down carefully, while his friends held their shields before him, for fear that the Achaeans might get up to their feet before Menelaus was hit. Then he stripped off the quiver lid and chose a feathered arrow which had never been shot, a carrier of black pains indeed. Without delay he fitted the arrow to the string and made his vow to Apollo Lysagenes, prince of archers, that he would offer solemn sacrifice of firstling lambs when he returned home to the sacred city of Zelea. He took fast hold of the string and the notches together and drew back the string to his breast, the iron point to the bow. So he drew it into a great round. Clang went the bow, jing went the string, out leapt the arrow, and flew sharp and fast, fierce to strike. But the immortal gods did not forget you, Menelaus. And Athena first and foremost stood before you and saved you from the arrow's point. She just swept it away from the flesh, as a mother sweeps away a fly from her sleeping child. And she made it go straight where the golden buckles of the belt were joined, and the corselet was folded over. The arrow struck right on the buckle. Through the belt it drove, through the corselet, and the loin piece which he wore to protect his flesh from a thrust, his last and chief defense, it went through that also. And the arrow pierced his skin, so that red blood ran down from the wound over his thighs and shins and ankles. The red blood on his fine white skin was like vermilion on ivory, when some clever craftswoman, Carian or Meonian, makes a cheek piece for horses. See it stored in a treasure chamber. Many a horseman would love to use it, but treasure lies waiting for a king to make the horse fine and the driver proud. My lord King Agamemnon shuddered when he saw the red blood running out of the wound. Menelaus himself shuddered. But when he noticed that barbs and binding were outside, he recovered his spirits again. Agamemnon groaned deep as he caught his brother by the hand, and the men groaned. Then he said, "Dear brother, it was death for you when I swore that oath and put you in front of the fight as our champion. For the enemy have shot you and trampled their oath underfoot. But an oath is not an empty form, nor is the blood of lambs and drink offerings and hands clasped in which we put our trust. For even if the Olympian does not act at once, he will act at last, and a heavy price men have to pay. Their own heads, their own wives, and their children. I know full well in my heart of hearts that a day shall come when sacred Troy shall perish, and the people of Priam, the mighty king, when Zeus Cronades, enthroned on high in the heavens, himself will shake his black mantle over them in wrath for this deceit. This indeed shall be, and shall not fail. But you will bring dreadful pain upon me, Menelaus, if you die now and fill up your count of days. In deep disgrace I should return to Argos, for our people would at once remember their native land, and we should leave to Priam and his Trojans their boast, our Argive Helen. But your bones would lie in the enemy's land, and rot there with your work undone. The Trojans would stamp in triumph on the tomb of Menelaus, and cry aloud, "I wish Agamemnon the same good luck against his other enemies as he has had here with his contemptible army. Just look now, he has sailed away with empty ships and left brave Menelaus behind." But if that should ever come true, may the earth open and swallow me up. Menelaus made light of it and said, "Take courage, and don't alarm the men. It is not a mortal wound. The belt saved me first, and then my kilt underneath, and the good armorer's work of the loin-piece." Agamemnon answered, "God grant it, my dear man. But we must see to this wound. The surgeon shall feel it and put some stuff in to ease the pain." Then he called out, "Talthybius, bring Machaon here as quick as you can. You know the fellow, Asclepius' son, the surgeon, and a good one too. Let him see to King Menelaus. Someone has shot him with an arrow, some Trojan or some Lycian it will be. They are good archers, and it was a fine shot, I must say, but bad luck for us." Talthybius went off at once, looking everywhere in the lines for Machaon. At last he found him standing among his own targeteers, the men from Tricca. Talthybius came up and told him plainly what had happened. "Quick, Asclepius, King Agamemnon wants you to have a look at our commander Menelaus. Someone has shot him with an arrow, a Trojan, or some good Lycian archer. He says it was a fine shot, but bad luck for us. Machaon was alarmed, and together they made their way through the lines. Soon they reached the place where the wounded man stood with a crowd of nobles round him. Machaon pulled out the arrow, and the barbs broke in the belt as he pulled it back. Then he loosened the belt and the kilt and the loin piece underneath. He found the wound and sucked out the blood and put on a plaster of soothing drugs. These were drugs which dear old Chiron had given to his father, and he knew them well. While they were attending to Menelaus, the Trojans began to come on under arms, and so the Achaeans armed themselves and prepared for battle. Then you would not see Agamemnon napping or shirking or unready to fight. No, he was all eagerness for battle and glory. He left car and snorting horses in charge of his man Eurymedon and ordered him strictly to keep them at hand until he should want a rest from his labors. Then he marched through the ranks on foot to give his orders. If he found the men brisk and lively, he encouraged them with a few words. "Stick to it, men. To it with all your might. Liars will not have Father Zeus to help them. Those who began it, those who broke their solemn oath, shall be a dainty meal for the vultures, and we will take their city and carry off their wives and children in shiploads." But if he found any slack and cursing the war, he rated them roughly. "Call yourselves fighting men. Long-distance champions with the bow is what I call you. A disgrace to the army. Have you no shame? Why do you stand there like a herd of deer, tired with running about all over the place, dazed and helpless? Yes, you stand there dazed and afraid to fight. Perhaps you are waiting till the enemy come as far as your ships. Fine ships, aren't they, all along the shore? You want to see whether God will spread his hand over you." So he went through the army, giving his orders to all. By and by he came to the Cretans, who were arming under their captain Idomeneus. He was in the front rank, furious as a wild boar. Meriones was speeding up the rear. This was a pleasant sight to the king, and he said in a friendly tone, "Idomeneus, you are the man for me, first at a feast and first in the field. Here you are, hard at work, and what when the big men have a banquet and bring out the best company wine to fill the flowing bowl? The others drink what is given them, but you always have a full bumper by your side, as I do, and as much as you like to drink. Now then, hey for battle, and keep up your reputation." Idomeneus answered, "Sir, I will not fail you. I am your loyal servant, as I promised and gave my pledge to be. But you should speed up the others and let us get to fighting as soon as we can, for the Trojans have broken their oath. Death and disaster shall be their lot, because they began it by breaking that oath." Agamemnon left him well satisfied. And next he came upon great Aeus and his little namesake, who were arming themselves amid a cloud of footmen. Thick black clumps of sturdy yonkers moved towards the battle, bristling with spears and shields, like some heavy cloud blown over the deep by the west wind. The goatherd sees it afar from his watching place, blacker than pitch over the deep as the whirlwind drives, and he shudders and guides his herd into a cave. My lord Agamemnon was glad to see this sight, and he told them what he thought in plain words. "You need no pressing from me, you doughty pair of captains. That you do for yourselves, and on your people go. Oh, Father Zeus, Apollo, Athena, I wish all the others had the same temper. Then King Priam's castle would soon bow down its head, and we should sack it and lay it waste with our hands." He passed on to Nestor, and found him among his Pelians, giving orders in that sonorous voice, placing his men and sending them out under his captains, Pelagon and Alastor, Chromius and Haemon and Prince Bias. In front he put the cars with horses and drivers, behind them the footmen, in formidable array like a wall, with the cowards in the middle so that they would have to fight whether they liked it or not. He was giving his orders, first to the men in the chariots, to keep their horses in hand and not to go rattling about in the melee. "Don't try to show off your driving and your courage. No one is to dash out in front and fight by himself. No one is to move to the rear. Keep your line, or you'll only be the weaker. But if anyone comes within reach of an enemy car, try a spear thrust. That's the way to fight. Many a strong city has been taken by those tactics." The old man had seen war before, and he knew all about it. Agamemnon was glad, and he told him plainly how he felt. "You may be old, sir, but I only wish your knees were as nimble and your strength as firm as the temper in that heart of yours. Ah, well, such is life. Old age is old age. I only wish others were old and you were young." The old hero loved a good horse, and he answered, "Ah, your grace, I do wish indeed I were now as young as I was when I killed Ereuthalion. Well, the gods do not give us everything at the same time. If I was young then, I am old now. Never mind, I will be with the horses and tell these people what to do. Words are the privilege of an old man. Spearing with spears is the young men's work. They have more youth and more strength than I have." Agamemnon passed on in great contentment. He found Menestheus standing among his warlike Athenians. Not far off was Odysseus and the Cephallenian division. These were no weaklings, but they had not heard the call to arms, for the opposing armies had only just begun to move, and they stood waiting until some other battalion should come up and give them a lead. But Agamemnon rated them soundly and left no mistake as to his feelings. "You, Menestheus, what would your royal father say to see you here? And you, the master of mischievous tricks, what cunning scheme is hidden in your mind? Why do you skulk in the rear and wait for a lead? You ought to be standing right in front and facing the fire. You are always first to hear my invitation whenever we give a dinner to the great men. Then you are pleased to eat your roast beef and to drink your nice wine at your ease. Now you would be pleased to see a dozen battalions go out before you to the fight." Odysseus frowned and replied, "What a thing to say, Prince! Bite it back and let it stay behind your teeth. Do you say we are slack when our people go out to battle? You shall see for yourself if you like. And if such matters interest you, you shall see the father of Telemachus fighting in the enemy's front line. What you say is so much wind." Agamemnon smiled when he saw him angry, and took back his words. No, Odysseus Laertiades, I know the master of stratagems. You do not want my scolding or ordering. I know the loyalty of your heart, for we are of one mind, you and I. Come along, we will make it all right by and by. If any harm has been said, let us forget it, for God's sake." He passed on, and the next he found was Tydeus, son proud Diomedes, standing amongst his chariots and horses, with Sthenelus, Capaneus' son, beside him. Agamemnon rated him too in plain language. "What pity to find you skulking here, goggling your eyes at the battlefield. What would your noble father have said? It was not your father's way to skulk. He used to be the first at the enemy, by a long way, as they say who saw him about the business. I never met him myself, never saw him, but they say he had no equal. Once, indeed, he came to Mycenae. Not in war. He came as a guest with Prince Polynices to enlist men, for they were besieging the sacred walls of Thebes. They begged hard for volunteers, and the people were ready to go, but Zeus changed their minds by showing unfavorable signs. So the envoys went away and got as far as the river Asopus. There they waited in the reeds and grass while Tydeus went on a parley to Thebes. He found a party of the Cadmeans feasting in the house of Eteocles. There was Tydeus alone among a host of Cadmeans, a stranger. But he feared nothing. He challenged them to trials of strength and beat them all easily by the help of Athena. Then the Cadmeans were enraged and laid an ambush for him on his way home. 40 lads with 2 leaders, Maon, Haemon's son, and Polyphontes, the son of Autophonus. Tydeus made an end of these also. He killed them, all but one, whom he sent back. Maon was the man, and he let him go in obedience to omens from heaven. Such a man was Aetolian Tydeus, but his son is not so good on the battlefield, although he is a better talker. Diomedes made no answer, for he respected the king's reproof. But Sthenelus spoke out. "My lord, do not say what is false when you know the truth. We are better men than our fathers, and we are proud of it. We took the fortress of Seven-Gate Thebes, although we had a weaker force against a stronger wall, because we trusted in the help of Zeus and omens from the gods above. But our fathers perished through their own reckless folly, so please don't put them equal to us." But Diomedes frowned at him and said, "Hold your tongue, old boy, and listen to me. I do not take it ill that his grace would urge the men to fight. He is our commander, and we are his men. He will have the glory if his men destroy the sacred city of Ilios. He will have the grief if his men are defeated. Come along, and let us join the battle." As he said the words, he leapt out of his car, and his armor clanged loudly upon him. It was enough to strike fear into a brave heart. Then the Danaan battalions moved on to battle, line after line, as the long billows roll to the shore, line after line, when the west wind drives. The swell gathers head far out on the sea, then bursts on the land in thunder, rearing and curving its crest about the headlands and spitting out the salt spray. So the army moved, each mass with its own leaders. Their words of command were heard, and the rest marched in silence, so that you might think that all that mighty host were dumb men clad in shining armor. But loud, clamorous cries resounded throughout the Trojan host, for they had not one speech and one language, but a confusion of tongues, since they were called from many lands. They were like a huge flock of ewes, innumerable, standing in a wide farmyard to be milked, which bleat without ceasing as they hear the cries of their lambs. Ares marshaled the Trojans, Athena bright-eyes the others, along with Terror and Rout and Discord, ever restless, sister and comrade of bloodthirsty Ares. She is little at first, then her crest rises, and she thrusts her head against the heavens while she strides upon the earth. So then Discord cast direful war among them, marching through the throng and multiplying troubles for mankind. Now the two armies met, dashing shield against shield and spear against spear, fury meeting fury in the mailed ranks. The embossed bucklers, clashing, made a dreadful din. Here was groaning, there shouts of triumph as men slew and men were slain, and the earth ran with blood. The uproar and the turmoil were like two great rivers in flood, pouring down a mass of water from the mountains into a deep ravine where two valleys meet, and the sound is heard far away by shepherds upon the hills. First blood to Archelochus, who killed a Trojan champion in the front rank, Echepolus Thalasiades. He struck the man on his horsehair plume, and the spear point pierced his forehead, running into the bone. Darkness covered his eyes, and he fell flat like a tower in the melee. When he fell, Elephenor caught him by the feet, Elephenor Chalcodontiades, captain of the Abantians, and tried to drag him out under the spears, for he wanted to strip him of his armor, but the struggle was soon over. For while he was dragging the body with his own side uncovered as he stooped, Angenor saw him and ran him through with his spear. So Elephenor fell and died, and over his body there was sharp work between Trojans and Achaeans, who leapt upon one another like wolves and knocked each other about. Then Telamonian Aeneas struck down Anthemian's boy, the lusty lad Simoeisius. They called him Simoeisius because he was born beside the river Simois, while his mother was on the way from Ida with her parents to visit their flocks. He never repaid the son's debt to his parents, for he died young by the spear of Aeneas. As he stepped out in front, Aeneas struck him on the right breast by the nipple. The spear ran right through his shoulder, and he fell. There he lay like a poplar tree which has grown up in the hollow of a great marsh, a smooth stem with branches growing at the top. Some cartwright has cut it down with his axe to bend into the felloe of a fine car, and there it lies drying on the river bank. So Simoeisius, when Aeneas struck him down. And Antiphos, one of the sons of Priam, cast a spear at Aeneas. He missed Aeneas, but hit Leucos, a good comrade of Odysseus, in the groin as he was dragging the man away, so that he fell flat over the body and let go. Odysseus was enraged to see his friend fall. He strode forward to the place, looking round watchfully, and the Trojans shrank back as he cast his spear and struck down a bastard son of Priam, Democoon, who had come at his father's summons from the mares at Abydos. That was the counterstroke for his friend's death. The spear pierced the man's temple, and darkness came over his eyes. He fell with a thud amid his crashing armor. Then the first ranks gave ground, and Hector with them. The Achaeans, cheering, dragged away the slain and moved a long way forward. But Apollo looked down out of Pergamos in anger and called aloud, "On, Trojans, on! Do not give way to Achaeans. Their flesh is not stone or iron. Volley away, and your points will cut their skins. And now there's no Achilles to fight for them. He is away by the ships, nursing his grievance in a bitter heart." The awful voice of the god resounded from the city walls, but Athena was in the field. Up and down went the most glorious Tritogeneia when she saw any giving way. Then fate caught hold of Diores Amorynsiades. He was struck by a jagged stone on the right shin near the ankle. A Thracian captain threw it, Pyros Ibrasides, who came from Aenos. The cruel stone smashed the bones and both sinews, and the man fell backwards in the dust, holding out both hands to his friends as he breathed his last. For Pyrrhus ran up and thrust him through by the mid-nipple. His bowels gushed out, and darkness came over his eyes. But as Pyrrhus sprang back, Aetolian Thoas cast a spear at his breast and pierced the lung. Thoas ran up and pulled out the spear, then drew his sword and struck him right in the belly, which was his death. But he did not strip off the armor, for there were other Thracians round him, with the top-knots on their heads and the long spears in their hands, who drove him back, staggering for all his size and strength. So these two lay in the dust together, Thracian captain beside the Epean, and many others fell round about. No one could make light of that battle, if any indeed were left untouched and unwounded, if Pallas Athena took him by the hand and led him through the mist, if she kept him free of hurt, for many Trojans and many Achaeans fell on that day, and lay prone in the dust, side by side. Book 5. How Diomedes did great deeds of valor, and wounded Aphrodite and Ares himself. Now comes the turn of Diomedes, Tygeus' son. For Pallas Athena gave him courage and boldness to make him come to the front and cover himself with glory. She kindled the flame that blazed steadily from his helmet and shield, like the star that shines brightest of all in late summer after his bath in the ocean. Such was the fire that blazed from the head and shoulders of Diomedes when she drove him through the midst where the fighting was thickest. There was one Dares among the Trojans, a man of substance and worth, a priest of Hephaestus. He had 2 sons, Phegeus and Idaeus, both fine soldiers. These 2 came out to meet Diomedes, they in their car, he on foot. When they came within range, Phegeus began by casting a spear at Diomedes. The spear passed over his left shoulder without touching him. Diomedes countered with a cast which did not miss. It struck the other full in the breast and rolled him out of the car. Then Idaeus leapt out, but he durst not bestride his brother's body, and he would never have escaped himself, but Hephaestus hid him in darkness and saved him, that his old father might not be wholly bereaved. Diomedes drove off the team and gave it in charge to his friends. The Trojans were all dismayed at the fate of these 2, one dead beside his car and one gone. Then Athena caught Ares by the hand and said, Ares, you men's bane, you bloodthirsty fort-stormer, why can't we leave Trojans and Achaeans to fight and see which of them Father Zeus will favor? Do let us 2 retire and keep clear of the anger of Zeus. So she led Ares away and found him a seat on the lofty bank of Scamandros. Now the Danaans drove back their enemy, and each of the captains brought down his man. First King Agamemnon. Odius, the Halizonian chief, was the first to turn, and Agamemnon drove his spear between the shoulders and out at the chest. He fell with a crash in his rattling armor. Next Idomeneus brought down Phaestus, the son of Meonian Boros from Tani. Idomeneus pierced his right shoulder as he was mounting his car. He fell out of the car, and darkness took him. While the grooms were stripping off his armor, King Menelaus killed Strophius' son, Scamandrios. A great hunter he was, a mighty hunter, for Artemis herself taught him to kill all the wild beasts which the mountain forest breeds. But no help was there for him then from Artemis archeress, nor the long shots for which he was famous. Menelaus caught him as he fled and ran him through the back between the shoulders. The spear came out through his chest, and he fell on his face under his rattling armor. Meriones again killed Phereclos. This was the son of Tecton Harmonides, an artist who knew how to make all sorts of lovely and precious things with his own hands, for Pallas Athena loved him well. It was he that built those fine ships for Alexandros, the beginning of all the troubles, which were the ruin of himself and all the people of Troy, for he knew nothing of what God had ordained. Meriones chased him and caught him and struck him in the right groin. The point ran through the bladder under the bone. He fell groaning upon his knees, and death covered him up. Then Meges slew Pedaeus. He was the bastard son of Antenor, but the lady Theano brought him up as lovingly as her own children to please her husband. Meges struck him on the sinew behind the head, and the blade cut his tongue at the root and went through the teeth. He fell in the dust, biting hard on the cold metal. Eurypylus, Euaemon's son, killed Hypsenor, the son of Dolopion. He was priest of Scamandros, honored among the people as if he were himself a god. Eurypylus gave chase, and with a sweep of his sword cut off the man's arm at the shoulder as they ran. The arm fell bleeding on the ground, and dark death took his eyes, a cruel fate. So the hard business of the fight went on. As for Diomedes, you could not tell which side he belonged to, Trojan or Achaean, for he stormed all over the plain, and the dense battalions of the enemy rolled away in confusion before him. That great company would not stand. It was like some winter torrent in flood, which thrusts away all dikes. No dike can hold it, no walls of the fruitful orchards, when it comes with a sudden burst, swollen by the pouring rain, and beats down in ruin the noble works of strong men. When Pandarus saw Diomedes storming over the plain and rolling the battalions before him, he aimed an arrow quickly at him and hit him on the right shoulder, on the plate of the corselet, as he came rushing on. The sharp point ran right through, and the blood ran over the corselet. Then Pandarus shouted, "On, Trojans! On, my brave horsemen! I have shot the best of the Achaeans. I do not think he will last long after that shot, if Lord Apollo really did send me here from Lycia." There was a boast for you. But the shot did not bring the man down. He drew back and stood in front of his horses, and said to Sthenelus, "Wake up, old fellow. Look sharp and get down from that car and pull this arrow from my shoulder." Sthenelus was down with one leap at his side, and he pulled the arrow right through the shoulder. The blood shot out in a spurt through the tunic. Then bold Diomedes prayed aloud to his goddess, "Hear me, O daughter of Zeus, almighty Atrione. If thou didst ever stand by my father's side in friendship on the battlefield, now again show thy love to me, Athena. Grant me to come within spear-cast of that man, and to slay that man who shot me unawares, and now declares boasting that I shall not long see the light of the sun." Pallas Athena heard his prayer. She made his limbs nimble, the feet and hands on him, and spoke in words that winged like arrows to the mark. "Courage now, Diomedes, and fight away, for I have put your father's courage in your breast, the fearless courage of that shield-shaking master of horses. And I have taken away the mist which was upon your eyes, that you may know man from God. Then, if some god comes here to try you, never fight against any god except Aphrodite. But if she comes into the field, you may wound her with your spear." With these words Athena left him, and he returned to the front of the battle. If he had been eager to fight before, now he was 3 times as wild. He was like a lion when he has leapt into the sheepfold after the woolly flocks, and the shepherd has wounded but not killed him. But this only makes the lion more furious, and the shepherd defends the sheep no more, but slinks into the hut and leaves them helpless in panic. They huddle in heaps, and the maddened beast leaps out of the fold. So Diomedes, maddened, fell upon the Trojans. There he slew Astynous and Hipeiron, one with a thrust through the breast, one with a sword stroke on the collarbone near the shoulder that shaved the shoulder clean off. These he left, and chased Abas and Polyidus, the two sons of Eurydamas, the old diviner of dreams. They never came back for the old man to read their dreams for them, but strong Diomedes killed them. Then he went after Xanthos and Thoon, the two sons of Phenops, whom their father loved well. But his old age was passed in sorrow, and he got no other son for his possessions. They were killed both and stripped, and they left mourning and lamentation for their father. They lived not to be welcomed home from the war, and their kinsmen divided the goods. Then he took two sons of Priam Dardonides, Achaemon and Chromius, in the same chariot. As a lion leaps among cattle grazing under the trees and breaks the neck of a cow or heifer, so this unwelcome visitor smashed them out of their car and stripped them of their armor. The team he gave to his men to drive away. When Aeneas saw him running riot in the field, he went searching amid the melee to see if he could find Pandarus anywhere. He found that formidable man and said to him, "Where is your bow now, Pandarus? Where are your winged arrows? Where is that fame in which you have here no rival and none in Lycia? Come now, lift up your hands to Zeus, and then have a shot at this man who is master of the field. Look what damage he has done already, how many good men he has brought down. I wonder if he is some god who has a grievance against our people and wants a sacrifice. Heavy is the wrath of God upon men." Pandarus answered, "There speaks Aeneas, the wise counselor. Indeed, yon man is exactly like Diomedes, if I may judge by the shield and the vizard, and I can see his horses. But I am not sure he is not really a god. If he is only a man, the clever son of Tydeus does not run mad like this without a god to back him. There must be some god beside him, invisible. And he turned the shot aside even as it hit the man. For I have tried already, and I hit the right shoulder through the corselet plate. I thought I should send him to Hades, but yet I did not bring him down. It must be some angry god. And I have no horses here and no car for my use. Yet my father has 11 fine chariots covered up carefully somewhere in his place, new built, new finished, with a pair of horses for each, champing rye and barley in the stable. How often the old warrior advised me when I was coming here to mount my car and drive my team and take the lead in the battle, but I would not listen. I only wish I had. The truth is, I wanted to spare the horses. I thought they might lack fodder in all this crowd of men when they were used to plenty. So I left them behind and came as a footman, with only my bow and arrows. And they were to do no good, as it seems, for I have already shot 2 of the champions, Tydides and Atrides, and hit them fair and drew blood from both, but it only made them more lively. So it was bad luck when I took my bow from peg on the day when I led my men to this beautiful city to please Prince Hector. Well, when I get home again and set my eyes on my native land and my wife and my tall house, if I don't break up these useless sticks with my own hands and chuck them into the fire, I will let a perfect stranger come in and chop off my head." Aeneas answered, No, don't say that. We shall do no good until you and I drive against the man and see what spears can do. Up with you into my car, and I'll show you what the horses of Tros are like. They know how to put on the pace, into the battle or out of the battle. They will carry us safe to the city, if Zeus lets Diomedes win. Here, take whip and reins, and I will get out and do the fighting. Or tackle him yourself, and I will drive. Pandarus answered, You take the reins, Aeneas. The horses are yours. They will go better with the hand they know, if we have to run for it, after all. They may take fright and run wild and refuse to carry us out of the battle if they miss your voice. And then the man will leap on us and kill us both and drive off the horses himself. No, you must drive your own team, and I will face him with my spear." So they got in and went off at a gallop. Sthenelus saw them coming and called out clearly, "Diomedes, my dear old friend, here are 2 strong men hot upon you, a pair of invincibles, Pandarus, the crack bowman, you know, Lycaon's son, and Aeneas, whose father is Anchises, and his mother is Aphrodite herself. Here's the car, let us be off, and don't go storming about in front like this, or you may lose your life." Diomedes said with a frown, "Don't talk of running away, for I will not listen to you. Shirking and lurking is not in my blood. I'm not a coward yet. I don't care to use a car. I will stay as I am and face them. Pallas Athene forbids me to fear." As for these two, their horses shall not save them both, if one does get away. And look here a minute, there is something else. If Athena vouchsafe to me, out of the riches of her grace, to kill them both, you leave our horses here and just hitch the rein over the handrail. Then be sure to make a dash for those horses of Aeneas, and drive them safely away. You know that they come of that stock which Zeus all-seeing gave Tros as the price of his son Ganymedes, because they were the best of all horses under the sun. And my lord Anchises stole a spat of that breed when he put his mares to them without asking leave of Laomedon. They brought him 6 colts in the stable. 4 of them he kept and fed at the stall. 2 he gave to Aeneas, and they can go. If we could get those 2, it would be grand. As they talked together, the others came galloping near, and Pandarus called out, "You are a hardy one. You are a clever one, a worthy son of Tydeus. Sure enough, my shot did not bring you down, my sharp arrow. Now then, I will see whether my spear will have better luck." With these words, he cast his spear and hit Diomedes on the shield. Right through it the point went and struck the corset. Then Pandarus shouted, "A hit right through the side, and I don't think you will last long now. Victory for me." Diomedes answered undismayed, "A miss, not a hit. But I think you two will never give over till one of you at least shall fall, and give a surfeit of blood to the strong-shielded god of war." Then he threw. Athena guided the point upon the man's nose beside the eye. It ran through his white teeth and cut off the root of the tongue, and the blade came out under his chin. He tumbled out of the car in his rattling armor, gleaming and flashing in the sun. The horses shied, and there his life and courage vanished away. Now Aeneas leapt out with shield and spear to save the body from the spoilers. He bestrode his friend like a strong lion, speared and shield well in front, ready to kill anyone who should face him, and shouting defiance. But Diomedes lifted a large stone, such as 2 men could not lift, as men are now, but he handled it easily by himself. This he crashed down upon the hip of Aeneas, where the thigh turns in the socket, what they call the cup. The jagged stone smashed the cup and burst both the sinews and tore away the skin. The hero fell forward on his knees and leaned with one hand upon the ground. Then black night covered his eyes. And that would have been the death of my lord Aeneas. But his mother, Aphrodite, saw what had happened to her son. She threw her white arms about him and covered him with the fold of her shining robe to shelter him from the blows of any who might wish to kill him. But Sthenelus had not forgotten what Diomedes had told him to do. He left his own horses out of danger, hitching the reins over the handrail. Then he dashed at Aeneas' horses and drove them away to his own people. These he sent back to the camp in charge of Deipolus, his familiar friend, and the nearest to his heart. Then quickly got into his own car and galloped after Diomedes. But Diomedes was following Aphrodite, spear in hand. He knew she was a timid goddess, not one of those who lord it in men's battles, not Athena, or city-sacking in Io. At last, after a long chase, he caught her, leapt on her, and thrust, and wounded the skin of her soft hand. The spear tore through that incorruptible robe which the Graces themselves had made for her, and pierced the flesh just above the palm of her hand. The blood ran out, that immortal blood of the gods, the ichor, which runs in those blessed veins. For they eat no bread and drink no wine, therefore they are bloodless and never die. She shrieked aloud and dropped her son, but Phoebus Apollo picked him up and saved him in a black cloud, so that no enemy could strike him and take his life. Then Diomedes shouted to the goddess, "Away from the battle, you daughter of Zeus! Isn't it enough that you beguile weak women? But if you will visit a battlefield, I think after this a battle will make you shiver if you hear only its echoes in the distance." She hastened away, raving in her agony. Iris took her out of the throng as swift as the wind. She was in great pain. The pretty flesh was stained. Soon she found Ares sitting on the left of the battle near a cloud with spear and horses. She fell on her knees, begging and praying her brother for the loan of his horses. "Brother, dear, do help me and lend me your team. I want to go home to Olympus. This hurts me too much, this wound. A mortal man did it to Diades, and he's quite ready now to fight Father Zeus himself." Ares let her have the horses, and she climbed into the car, much distressed. Iris followed and took the reins, and touched up the horses, and they flew with a will. They soon reached the heights of Olympus, safe at home. Then Iris loosed the horses and gave them their ambrosial fodder. But Aphrodite threw herself on her mother's lap. Dione took her daughter in her arms and stroked her with her hand and said, "My dear child, which of the sons of heaven has treated you like this, you poor innocent, as if you had been caught doing something naughty?" Aphrodite answered, and where were her smiles now? "Oh, my wound! Diomedes hit me, that bully, because I was trying to save my own son Aeneas, my darling favorite. This war of Trojans and Achaeans has become a war of Achaeans against gods." Dione said, "Make the best of it, my love. Be patient, even if it hurts. Many of us Olympians have had to make the best of what men do, and we have brought much trouble upon one another. Ares made the best of it when Otos and Ephialtes made him their prisoner. They shut him up in a brazen jar for 13 months. Indeed, that would have been the end of Ares, the greedy fighter, if their stepmother Erebia had not brought the news to Hermes, and Hermes stole him away when he was already in great distress from his cruel prison. Hera made the best of it when mighty Heracles shot her in the right breast with a 3-barbed arrow, and she had to bear pain intolerable. Hades the Tremendous made the best of it when that very same man, the son of Zeus Almighty, shot him in Pylos among the dead men, and the sharp arrow hurt him sorely. He went up to Olympus in his trouble, pierced with cruel pains, for the arrow had run through his shoulder and distressed him. Dione put on a plaster of soothing simples and made it well, for Hades could not die. Oh, that hard, violent man, that worker of evil, who distressed the Olympian gods with his arrows. And now you. But Athena set the man on you. Silly fool, he has not sense enough to know that he who fights with the immortals has not long to live. He will never come home from the war. His children will not climb on his knees and daddy him. Then let this Diomedes take care. He may be very powerful, but a stronger foe than you may meet him. One day his loving wife may waken the household with lamentations when she misses her wedded husband, the best man of the Achaean host. So much for the queenly Aegialeia, so much for Diomedes, who knows so well how to manage a horse." While she spoke, she was wiping away the ichor from the wounded wrist with both her hands. The arm grew whole. The throbbing pains were assuaged. Athena and Hera were looking on, and now they began to tease Zeus Chronides with their raillery. Athena led off. "Father Zeus, will you be angry if I say something? I feel sure Cypris has been tempting some Achaean woman to join the Trojans, whom she loves now so desperately. She must have been fondling one of their pretty frocks and scratched her little hand on a golden brooch." He smiled at that, the great father of gods and men, and calling Aphrodite to him, he said, "My dear child, war is not your department. Leave all that to Ares and Athena, and busy yourself with marriage and love." While they were talking like this together, the bold Diomedes had leapt upon Aeneas, although he perceived that Apollo was holding his arms above the man. He did not trouble about the great god, but wanted only to kill Aeneas and strip off his armor. 3 times he leapt at the man to kill him. 3 times Apollo beat back his shield. But when he came on the 4th time, like a devil, Apollo shouted at him with a loud cry, "Beware, Diomedes! Forbear, Diomedes! Do not try to put yourself on a level with the gods. That is too high for a man's ambition. The immortal gods are one race. Men that walk upon the earth are another." Tydides moved back a step when he heard these words, fearing the wrath of Apollo shoot afar, and Apollo took Aeneas away from the crowd and set him down in Pergamos within his own temple. Then Leto and Artemis healed him and made much of him in the great sanctuary, while Apollo Silverbow created a phantom like Aeneas, in armor like his, and let Achaeans and Trojans batter one another upon their leathern shields and fringe-fluttering bucklers. Then Phoebus Apollo called out to Ares, Oh, Ares, Ares, you men's bane, you bloodthirsty fort stormer, go in now, will you, and drag out this man from the battle, this Diomedes, who is ready to fight against Father Zeus himself. First he tackled Cypris and wounded her wrist, and then he made her leap at me like a devil. He stepped back and took his seat on the citadel, and dreadful Ares went into the Trojan ranks, rallying them to the fight. He took the form of Acamas, the Thracian captain, and called loudly to the sons of Priam, "Now, my young princes, how long will you let the Achaeans kill and kill? Will you wait till they assault the city gates? There lies a man whom we honored as high as Hector himself, Aeneas, Anchises' son. Come on, let us bring our good comrade out of the turmoil." Then Sarpedon cried out in reproach, "Where is your old courage, Hector? I think you said you could hold the city without a crowd of allies, alone, with your brothers and the rest of your family. But I don't see any of them now. I don't notice them here. No, they are like a pack of dogs shrinking away from a lion. We have to do the fighting. We, your allies. I am one of your allies, and I came from far away. Yes, Lycia is far away beside the eddying Xanthos. There I have left my own wife and little boy. There I have left all the goods I have, which all the have-nots covet. All the same, I lead my Lycians. I am ready to fight any man, though there is nothing of mine here for the Achaeans to harry and lift. And there you stand. You don't even tell your people to defend their wives. A fine haul your enemies will have to play with, like fish caught in the meshes of a net. They will soon sack that noble city of yours. It should be your care night and day to make yourself pleasant to your allies. Go down on your knees and beg them to hold their ground firmly, and then you would have no reproach." That stung Hector. He jumped out of his car and went everywhere, shaking his 2 spears, rallying all to the fight. Now they turned their faces towards the enemy. The Achaeans stood firm, and battle was joined again. The chariots ran wheeling about, the horses' hooves beat up the dust, which drove in a great cloud to the brazen sky and covered the Achaeans with white. The whole place was like some great threshing floor, when the farm hands are winnowing and throwing up their shovelfuls into the wind. Golden Demeter divides corn and chaff, and the chaff is blown away into white heaps. So they fought with might and main, and Ares covered the battle with darkness to help the Trojans. He was here and there and everywhere, doing his best for the Trojans, as Apollo had told him to do when he saw that Athena was gone, for she had been helping the Danaans. Apollo himself brought Aeneas out of the sanctuary and made him well and strong again. Then Aeneas joined his friends. Very glad they were to see him alive and hearty with all his limbs, but they asked no questions. They had quite enough to do with Silverbow and bloodthirsty Ares, and Discord, who gave them no peace. The Danaans were kept hard at it by Aeus Big and Aeus Little, by Odysseus and Diomedes, but they needed no driving. Trojans might storm and Trojans might strike. They knew no fear. They stood immovable, like the clouds which Cronion masses upon the mountain tops in fine weather, while all the blustering winds are asleep, Boreas and the other winds which scatter the dark clouds with their whistling blasts. There stood the Danaans, and faced the enemy immovable, and Atrides was among them with cheering words. "Show yourselves men, my friends, and keep a stout heart. Think of your honor. With all men's eyes upon you, it is a shame to be a coward. He that fights and will not run may live to see another sun. He that runs and will not fight is bound to die, and serves him right." He cast a spear quickly and hit the front man, Deicoan Pergesides, by the side of Aeneas. The Trojans honored him equally with Priam's own son, because he was always quick to push to the front. The spear went through his shield and ran through the belt into the belly. The man fell with a thud under his rattling armor. Then Aeneas struck down the 2 sons of Diocles, Crethon and Orsilochus, strong men both. Their father lived in Phera, a man of wealth, and sprung for Alpheus, the river god. This river flows through the Pylian country. The god begat Orsilochus, who was king over a great people. Orsilochus begat Diocles, a stout warrior himself, and so were his twin sons. These two, when they grew up to manhood, sailed for Ilios with the fleet to avenge the wrong of Agamemnon and Menelaus, and there they found their deaths. So one might see a couple of young lions bred in the mountain forests, which ravage the folds and carry off cattle and sheep until they are killed at last by the hand of man. And here the hands of Aeneas brought them low, and they lay like two fallen fir trees. Menelaus saw them fall. He was sorry for the lads and strode through the press, shaking his spear. Ares himself had made him angry because he wished Aeneas to kill him. But Nestor's son Antilochus caught sight of the king. He was anxious that nothing should happen to him, and so they might waste all their labors. And he came up just as the two were face to face, ready to begin, and stood beside him. When Aeneas saw two instead of one, he did not wait, although he was no mean warrior. The two dragged away the dead bodies and handed the poor devils over to their people, and then returned to the fight. There they killed Polymenes, the Paphlagonian captain. Menelaus struck him, standing with a spear thrust through the collarbone. Antilochus cast a stone at his driver, Mydon Antimniades, as he was managing the horses in his chariot, and struck his elbow. He dropped the reins, and Antilochus, leaping upon him, drove his sword through the man's temple. He rolled out, gasping, and tumbled half over with head and shoulder dangling in the dust. There he stuck a long time, for the dust was deep, until the struggling horses kicked him out into the dust. Then Antilochus whipped them up and drove them to the rear. Hector spied them across the ranks and made for them with shouts, while a strong body of his men followed. Ares and Io were in front, she carrying the merciless din of war, Ares wielding a monstrous spear and showing himself now before Hector, now behind. Diomedes shuddered when he saw Ares. As a man, after a long march, stops helpless when he sees a furious river foaming and flowing along and leaps back, so Diomedes leapt back and cried out to his people, "How could we admire Hector, my friends, and call him hero and champion? There is always some god beside him to keep him safe. See, there is Ares now in the shape of a mortal man. Keep your faces to the foe and move to the rear. We must not think of pitched battle against gods." As he spoke, the Trojans closed up. Then Hector killed two good fighting men in one chariot, Menestheus and Anchialus. But big Aeneas saw them fall. He could not leave them there, so he made a stand beside them, and with his spear he struck down Amphius, Seleucus' son. This was a man rich in cattle and rich in corn, whose home was at Paesos, but fate had brought him to fight for Priam and his sons. Aeneas struck him in the lower belly through the belt. When he fell, Aeneas ran up to seize his arms, but he was met with a shower of spears, most of them falling on his shield. He set one foot on the body and pulled out his own spear, but he could not strip off the body armor in that shower of spears. He was afraid he might be surrounded by such a crowd of enemies strongly armed. They pushed him away from them, strong though he was, and he retired, staggering. So the turmoil of the battle went on. One fine, strong man, Tlepolemus, Heracles' son, was driven by hard fate against Prince Sarpedon. There the two men stood face to face, son and grandson of Zeus Cloud-Gatherer, and Tlepolemus said the first words. "Sarpedon, you are a high counselor among your own people, but why must you be skulking here, an unwarlike fellow like you? They lie who say you are a son of Zeus, for you are far behind those who were sons of Zeus in former times. How different was the great Heracles, my father, all daring, lion heart. He came to this place about Laomedon's horses with only 6 ships and a few men, and sacked the city of Ilios and made her streets a desert. But you are a coward, heart, and your people are dwindling away. I don't think you will be much help to the Trojans after your journey from Lycia, even if you are very strong. But you shall be vanquished by me and go to the gates of Hades." Sarpedon answered, "Tlepolemus, that great man, destroyed Ilios because of the folly of Laomedon, who mocked him after honest service, and refused to give the horses which he had traveled so far to earn. As for you, I declare death and destruction shall be yours in this place. You shall be vanquished by my spear. You shall give glory to me and your soul to Hades." As he spoke, Tlepolemus lifted his ashen spear, and both let fly at the same moment. Sarpedon struck his man in the neck. The cruel point ran right through, and dark night covered his eyes. The other spear eagerly pierced the left thigh of Sarpedon, grazing the bone, but his father still kept his life safe. Sarpedon was carried out of the battle by his friends. The spear, dragging along, gave him great pain, but no one noticed it or thought of drawing it out to let him stand on his feet. They were in great haste, and had too much to do in looking after him. On the other side, Tlepolemus was carried away by the Achaeans. Odysseus was furious to see this, though he was a patient man. He was in two minds whether he should go on in pursuit of Sarpedon or kill more Lycians instead. But it was not ordained that Odysseus should slay the son of Zeus Thunderer, and Athena turned his mind to the Lycian crowd. There he killed Cyrannus, Alastor, Chromios, Alcandros, Halios, Noemon, Prytanis, and more he would have killed, but Hector saw him and hastened to the spot, bringing terror with him. Sarpedon was glad indeed when he came near, and called out piteously, "Priamides, my friend, don't let them get hold of me. Help me, and then let me die in your city, since it seems I was never to return to my native land, or to make my wife happy and my little boy." But Hector passed by without a word. He was mad to drive the enemy back and to kill many. So Sarpedon was carried on and laid under a noble oak tree, and there his friend Pelagon pushed out the spear from his thigh. Sarpedon fainted dead away, but he came to again as the north wind breathed upon him and brought life back to his fainting spirit. The Argives, before Ares and Hector, neither turned about nor could they hold their ground, but they moved backwards, facing the foe, when they found Ares to be with their enemies. And who was first slain and who last by Hector and brazen Ares? Teuthras, and then Orestes, Aetolian Tricas, and Enomaus, Helenos Sinopides, and Oresbios in his flashing kilt, who used to live in Hyle, near the Cephaean lake, husbanding his wealth, near neighbor to the other Boeotians in their land of plenty. But now Hera saw the Argives getting the worst of the battle, and she called out to Athena in plain words, "Bless us all, Atrytone. Aren't you the daughter of all-triumphant Zeus? And is our word to go for nothing? We promised Menelaus that he should destroy Ilios, and are we going to let Ares ruin everything in this mad way? Let us see if our help can mend matters." Athena was willing enough. Then Hera ran about, harnessing the horses and putting on their golden frontlets. Hera herself, the queen of heaven, daughter of mighty Kronos. Hebe fitted the wheels to the car, brazen wheels with 8 spokes, at each end of an iron axle-tree. Each had a felloe of gold incorruptible, with a brazen tire fitted all round. Wonderful things. Each had a nave of silver turning about the end of the axle-tree. The body was of gold, and silver bands braided tightly, and there was a handrail curving round on each side. The pole in front was of silver. On the end of this Hebe fastened the golden yoke and hung the golden neck straps. Lastly, Hera led the horses under the yoke, hot for the battle. Then Athena slipped off her soft linen robe, which she had made and embroidered with her own hands. It fell on her father's floor, and she put on the tunic of Zeus Cloud-gatherer, and arrayed herself for the weeping work of war. Over her shoulders she cast the tasseled goatskin cape, an awful thing, for panic is wreathed about it. Discord is there, valor is there, blood-curdling shock is there. And there is the Gorgon's head, that awful prodigy, awful and horrible, the sign and wonder of Zeus Almighty. Upon her head she put a helmet with 2 horns and 4 bosses, all of gold, and decorated with the champions of 100 cities. She set her foot in the fiery car, grasping the spear, so heavy, huge, and strong, with which when she is angry she vanquishes battalions of fighting men, a true daughter of her mighty sire. Hera quickly touched up the horses. The celestial gates opened of themselves, groaning upon their hinges, those gates which the seasons used to guard, for they have charge of Olympus and high heaven to close or unclose the solid cloud. There, through the gates, they drove the obedient horses. They found Cronion sitting alone upon the topmost peak of Olympus. Then Hera drew up and said to him, "Father Zeus, have you nothing to say to these violent doings of Ares? What a mort of men he's been killing, wiping out the whole Achaean nation, slapdash, most improper, I declare. Cypris and Apollo Silverbow just enjoying themselves quite at their ease after setting on this idiot who won't keep the rules. Father Zeus, will you be angry with me if I beat him well and chase him out of the field?" Zeus, Cloud-gatherer, answered, "Go along, do. Send Athena on the hunt. She knows how to make him smart." Hera lost no time, but whipped up the horses, and away they flew with a will between earth and the starry sky. One leap of those whinnying thoroughbreds takes them as far as a watcher on the mountains can see into the dim distance over the waves. On the plain of Troy, where the two rivers Simois and Scamandros join their streams, Hera pulled up and loosed the horses, and left them unseen in a thick cloud. Simois made a crop of ambrosia grow up for them to graze upon. Then the two goddesses scuttled along like a pair of pigeons to the rescue of their friends, the Argives. They found Diomedes in the midst of a throng of the best fighting men who pressed close about him, furious as roaring lions or wild boars in all their strength. There Hera stood still, and taking the shape of Stentor, that great heart with the trumpet voice who could shout as loud as any 50 men, she cried out, "Shame on you, Argives! You are a disgrace to your good looks. Handsome is that handsome does. When Achilles showed himself in the field, not a Trojan would come outside the gates. They were too much afraid of that man's mighty spear. And now they have left Troy far behind, and here they assault you beside your own ships." So she kindled a fiery temper in each one. But Athena leapt to the place where Diomedes was among the chariots, cooling the wound of the arrow. He was holding up the broad strap of his shield and wiping away the blood and sweat from his weary arm, for he was in great distress. The goddess took hold of his horse's yoke and said, "Ah, you are not much like your father, Tydeus. He was a small man, but a fighter. I told him myself not to fight and not to show off that time when he was sent alone into Thebes to parley with the Cadmeans. I told him to feast away and sit quiet. But he had a spirit, then and always, and he challenged the young men and beat them all. But you, I stand by you and take care of you and bid you to fight with all my heart, but perhaps you are tired out with your impetuous assaults. Or can it be that you are afraid, that you are no son of Tydeus Onides?" Diomedes answered, "I know you, divine daughter of Zeus Almighty, so I will tell you the truth with all my heart. I am not afraid, I shrink from nothing, but I still remember your commands. I was not to fight with any of the blessed gods at all, except Aphrodite, but if she came into the battle, I was to give her a wound. That is why I now retreat, and why I have gathered all these men here, for I know Ares, master of the battlefield." Athena said, "Diomedes, you are a man after my own heart. Don't be afraid of Ares or any other immortal. You shall see, I will be with you. Drive straight for Ares, hit him hard. Don't bow down to Ares, that mad, furious creature, that graven image of wickedness, Mr. Always. Yesterday he stood up in front of Hera and me and vowed he would fight the Trojans and help the Argives. And now he is on the Trojan side and forgets all about that." So saying, she pulled back Sthenelus and pushed him out of the car. Out he jumped in a jiffy, and she got in beside Diomedes in great excitement. How the axle tree groaned under the weight, for it carried an awful goddess and a mighty man. Athena grasped whip and reins, and away went the horses straight for Ares. At that moment he was stripping the armor from Periphas, covered with blood. Periphas, Ochesius' son, a huge man, the first champion of the Aetolians. But Athena put on the hiding cap of Hades, for she did not want Ares to see her. But Ares did see Diomedes, and as soon as he saw him, he left the dead man lying where he fell and went straight for Diomedes. He came up on the offside and let fly with his spear over yoke and reins, but Athena caught it as it flew past and sent it harmless over the car. Diomedes followed up with a thrust at Ares, and Athena drove the spear straight into his belly where the kilt is girdled. The point ran in and tore the flesh, and Diomedes pulled the spear back. Then Ares roared like a trumpet, as loud as 9,000 men could shout, aye, 10,000 men in the turmoil of battle. Trojans and Achaeans alike trembled to hear the roar of the insatiate god of war. What was this Diomedes now beheld? Sometimes, after sultry heat, a furious whirlwind arises, and you may see a great black mass blowing up from the clouds. That is what Diomedes beheld now. And it was Ares blowing up through the clouds into high heaven. Instantly he was in Olympus, where the gods do dwell. Down he sat by the side of Zeus in a miserable state, and showed him the immortal blood running from his wound, and said in a dismal tone, without mincing words, "Father Zeus, have you nothing to say to these violent doings? We gods have to put up with the most terrible things from one another if we do a good turn to a man. And we're all against you, for you begat that crazy girl, curse her, who has always some mischief in hand. All the rest of our family obey you. We submit, every one of us. But that girl, you don't care what she says or what she does. Indeed, you set her on, for she is your own child, confound her. Now, see what she has done. Put up this young bully Diomedes to run amok against the immortal gods. First, he wounds Cypris on the wrist. Then he is on me like a devil. But I got away thanks to my quick heels. I don't know how long I might have been there, most uncomfortable among the damned corpses. Or if I lived, I should be a cripple from those spear prods." Zeus Cloud-gatherer frowned at him and said, "Don't sit there whimpering, you facing always. I won't have it. I hate you more than any other god alive. All you care for is discord and battle and fighting. You are just like your mother with that stubborn, insufferable temper. It's all I can do to control her without using my hands. It is some plan of hers, I am sure, which brought you into all this. However, I will not let you suffer any longer, for you are my son, after all. But if any other god had begotten such a nuisance, you should have been down below the heavenly host long ago." Then he sent for Paeon the healer. Paeon put on a plaster of soothing simples and made him well, for he was not mortal. The wound healed over at once, just as you might drop fig juice into a bowl of milk and it curdles as you stir. Hebe bathed him and dressed him up smart, and he took his seat beside Zeus Cronion, quite happy and cheerful. Soon Hera and Athena returned home, Hera the friend of Argos, and Athena an ever-present help in time of trouble, as soon as they had put an end to the murderous exploits of Ares, the enemy of mankind. Book 6. How Paris was brought back into battle, and how Hector parted